And was just very interested. I love teaching. I still teach, but I think any of us that are in these leadership roles, you have to be really interested in what I call the ecosystem of school. Yep. And I think for me, that ecosystem is something that is what kind of keeps me going during the day. So funny enough, I actually trained as an English teacher, but I now teach AP government. So I took a lot of government classes when I was in college, and it sort of happened serendipitously. There was one year we were short a section, and we're trying to figure out who was going to cover this class, and we had extra English sections available, and so I turned to the assistant head and said, I can do that. I can do that for a semester, and then just sort of fell in love with the class. The other thing, actually as a head of school, it's a little easier to teach that class than English, because English is more of a discussion class. It flows from day to day, and when you're a head of school, sometimes you miss class, and so it's easier to AP government's more of a content course, so it's easier for me to kind of manage that with the schedule of being a school leader. Well, let me first say that again, I went to a big public high school, and I think you can get a great education in the public system, and so nothing that I say about private school is meant to disparage public schools, and I always say that because I do feel like there's a misconception about private schools sometimes, that they're elite places that are not accessible, and I think the big reason that the big difference that you would see in a private schools, we're communities of choice, right? So families are choosing to join the community because they want it to join a community that has very distinct values. And a lot of private schools have different priorities. Our priority is academic rigor, right? And so that's a key component of what we're trying to do every day. Personalizing the experience, and so that then involves size, right? And sort of class size, and different types of advisory that allow students and adults to have, I think, much more contact than they would have in a system where it's a much higher student to teacher ratio. I also think, we are very, very clear. And if you read our mission and philosophy, I can't think of a school that spends more time thinking about who we are and trying to write that down clearly and then to articulate that all the time. And so I think when everybody's on the same page, it makes it easier to sustain a culture and a sense of community. I think we have more freedom in some ways, in terms of the students that we do choose to admit. We have more flexibility in terms of our hiring, which I think allows us to make sure that the individuals that we're hiring are totally aligned with our values. Yeah, it's a great question. I think for us, it's we really want students to learn to use their minds well, and so that they can really navigate different academic challenges across various intellectual disciplines. We want students to be curious and stay curious, and I think that in the current culture can be a challenge. Where I think we're so ends focused or pre-professional focused that we've sort of that sustaining a sense of curiosity, intellectual curiosity, is something that we want students to come away with. As my mother used to say to me when I was younger, it's more important to be a good person than a good student. She said, although to do both is preferable. And so I think for us, that's another feature. Like we really want students to learn to be ethical citizens. I think for us, we also have a real focus on the environment, on the natural environment. And so that's an ethos that we hope that our students are instilled with. And as we say at the end of the college process, I always say to parents, in 11th grade, we have a college night, and I said, at Gunston, we really believe that the question, where do I want to go, begins with the question, who am I, right? And I think if you understand who you are as a learner and as an intellectual, if you understand what your strengths are and what your interests are, you're much more likely to make a good college choice, right? As opposed to starting with a preset list or some preset ranking and then trying to adjust yourself to the ranking. I think those are values that we really try to instill. The world is changing. I mean, it really is changing, and I guess the world is always changing. You think about I think about my mother began when she started teaching in 1960. Her first year was in a newly integrated school, right? So it's hard for me to say, oh, things are changing now in ways that they aren't before. But I do think the notions of attention. There's so many things in our culture that are competing for students' attention, that being able to instill that attention and values can be a challenge. I think all private schools are trying to navigate financial sustainability. That we want to be able to remain at some level affordable while also being able to deliver a really high quality education. So I think we're not immune from that. I think the workforce is changing. I think about, I was reading, that the number of English majors that are graduating now from college has dropped some enormous percentage in the last 10 years. And I'm thinking, it used to be hard to find a physics teacher and a biology teacher. Now those are easy hires, right? Those are because so many people are studying STEM, whereas, we need a lot of people in the humanities. Younger people are not going into teaching, I think, in the same way that they have been in the past. So some of those kind of workforce challenges are ones that we are facing. Jim, I think about the things that keep me up at night are the things I can't see. COVID was something that just came out of the blue, and I'm always asking, like, okay, what's the next COVID? Is it a Category 5 hurricane? Like what? So I think for me, that's it's like, what are the biggest challenges? It's almost like the unknown, So I think trying to maintain a culture of values in a society where you can see, which is pushing back against some of the values that we're trying to instill. That's a challenge, right? Because that means that as a school, you've got to be countercultural in some ways, and you've got to get people to buy in to that counterculture. There's nothing that delights me more than seeing a brand new group of 60 ninth graders just trying to understand who they are, and then watching them over 4 years develop into the young adults that they're going to become. I just got back from a field trip today with a bunch of students, and I just couldn't stop laughing on the bus. High school kids are a lot of fun, and I think that's actually one of the things that I think is special about Gunston is we do have these great adult-student relationships. I think the students feel like we respect them, and I think they in turn respect us, and it allows us to have, I think, a looser relationship that allows you to have these fun moments together. I think Gunston is just a special place. When you drive down this road and you get onto this 75-acre campus, there's just something different about the culture and the feel of the school. And I think, so there are things that you can see right away when you're here, but I think it's those things that you can't see, which are those relationships that we have with students. I think the level of support that we offer students. I'm very fortunate to work with a great group of teachers and a great leadership team. And so there's a lot of good things going on here. A lot of really great professionals that I work with who have the best interests of kids in mind. And I speak a little bit, I'm actually speaking a little bit closer to home here. I'm a parent for the first time at Gunston this year, and I'm seeing that firsthand. I'm seeing the way that my child is benefiting from the culture of the school, from this wonderful group of peers that she's with, teachers that are challenging her. She'd probably die if she knew I was talking about her on camera, but it's just been lovely to, I've been doing this work now for 15 years. I finally have my own child in the school, and I'm getting to be able to experience it firsthand. So I feel like I'm giving people a homework assignment when you ask this. But if you go to our website and you look at our mission and philosophy, that document has been painstakingly reviewed. Like, nothing in our mission and philosophy, none of those words are empty words. And so if you really want to understand who we are, that you should start there.